and welcome to episode 10 of Tina Talks Keto. Thanks for all of your wonderful comments, especially those concerned for my health that I spoke about in episode 9. I don't have any updates yet other than I've seen a new endocrinologist and he will be running some blood work and scans. And thanks again to all of you who are watching and listening to my videos. I greatly appreciate it. Please remember to like them and subscribe. My channel and these videos are about my journey on a ketogenic way of eating, and they are also about what I've learned along the way. My name is Tina Barkan, and for the past 28 months, I've been eating a low-carb diet. In the beginning, I followed Dr. Atkins' plan in his 1972 book, and more recently, I've been following Dr. Eric Westman's food plan. Starting on January 2nd, I did a 7-day challenge strictly following Dr. Westman's plan. It was a great lesson in carb creep and fat creep because I got comfortable over the past 2 years thinking I was following his plan, and then realizing from the challenge that I was allowing myself some liberties I shouldn't have allowed myself. Fortunately, I took off the few pounds I gained, and I can still say that I'm down about 60 pounds from when I started, and I'm at my goal weight. This is a great time to reflect on the plan you are following, and perhaps go back to the basics that you started with. As we go together with my journey, I'll talk about what version of keto I started with, what I'm doing now, and what worked, and what changed along the way, and what didn't work. As I must mention every time, what you hear from me is my opinion. It's what worked or didn't work for me. What works for you may be different. It doesn't mean one is right and the other isn't. We all need to learn what's best for us individually, and hopefully I can help with that. The things I talk about in this video and any past or future videos are not any kind of medical advice. I'm not a doctor, so before you make any changes, please see your physician. Today, I want to talk about refining our why. Why are we following this way of eating? Most of us start eating this way to lose weight. That's absolutely the reason I started it. I've done 1 million, or at least it seems like 1 million, diets, and was frustrated beyond belief. I remembered that Atkins had worked way back when. And by way back when, I mean in the 70s. And I hoped that maybe it would work again. On my first day, I didn't have a why. I hadn't read or heard about having a why. But shortly into my journey, I started reading about creating a why, and once my stall began, it really helped me to keep going. But my why, after I refined it, was no longer, I want to lose weight, or I want to be healthy, or I want to live to see my grandchildren grow up. Stay with me. I'll elaborate. Let's start by asking, why do we need a why? It's to help us make the right choices when faced with situations that may cause us to stumble. That may be walking past a bakery, or going grocery shopping and all the end caps are screaming, "Buy me." How about walking through Costco and seeing all the samples available to taste test? Do you live with a significant other who buys foods that you shouldn't eat? How are you doing ordering food in a restaurant? One would think that a why of staying alive to see one's grandchildren grow up would be a great why. But it really isn't. It's too global. It's too easy to say, this one bite, or 5 bites, or this meal, or this snack won't make any difference. Except that it does. We need to refine our why so that we have something that will work to stop us from that one bite 2 bites, or 1 meal craving. So how do we go about refining our why? What needs to happen to make I want to be alive to see my grandchildren grow up? Or how do we make reversing type 2 diabetes become a reality? In my opinion, we need to look at our health metrics. Of course, eating a low-carb lifestyle every day is an answer, but when cravings are strong, the mindset of just this once can overtake all sensibilities. We need a why that stops us from the just this once mentality, and this why can be health metrics. The health metrics to look at and trim down are the following. A1C, and there's a link to the Center for Disease Control's definition of A1C in the show notes. Then fasting insulin and fasting glucose, followed by C-peptide, which indicates average insulin levels. Checking both a fasting insulin with a C-peptide level is important because it's a more stable reading than a single insulin level. And if you really want to get into the weeds, get liver function tests such as ALT and AST, and kidney function like eGFR. All of these values are found in your blood work. For cardiovascular concerns, the important number is the ratio of triglycerides to HDL. Take the triglyceride and divide by the HDL. The closer to 1, the better. So if your why is to live to see your grandchildren, then what do you need to do to increase your lifespan? You could say, I want to lower my fasting glucose. That's a step to potentially reversing getting type 2 diabetes and also to live longer in general. If your new goal is to lower fasting glucose, ask yourself what will happen if you eat the donut that's calling your name. For more information about what blood work values you should get tested, Dr. Ken Berry and Kim Howerton have a great book called Common Sense Labs that will guide you. The link to the book is in the show notes. My why became my need to lower my insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a metabolic disorder and is a very common condition. This chart illustrates many of the diseases that are caused by insulin resistance. It typically accompanies obesity, a diagnosis of prediabetes, or a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance is also linked to an increased risk of some cancers, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, mental health disorders, and other chronic conditions. These are great reasons to use reversing insulin resistance as your immediate why. Insulin resistance happens when we eat too much glucose and our body responds by releasing insulin and eventually releasing too much insulin and causing our cells to become resistant to this extra insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, and when insulin is high, it blocks fat loss. And if our cells are resistant to insulin, the glucose we eat turns into fat. Insulin is a big reason for why just counting calories doesn't work for many of us. It doesn't matter which diet you are following. If you are insulin resistant, you have to reverse this insulin resistance in order to lose weight. How do you know if you're insulin resistant? One way is to get a fasting insulin blood test, but the other is to evaluate how you've been eating. If you are middle-aged or older and have been eating a diet high in carbs for a long time, then you are likely to be insulin resistant. About 85% of us are insulin resistant. You can reverse insulin resistance over time by eating a diet very low in carbohydrates. By the time I was in my second month of my 5-month stall, I had figured out that I was insulin resistant and that I needed to reverse this to end my stall. There are lots of YouTube videos about insulin resistance, and I've watched hours and hours of them. Dr. Robert Sivas, Dr. Ben Bickman, Dr. Annette Bosworth, also known as Dr. Boz, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Jason Fung, and Dr. Sten Ekberg are just a few of the experts with videos on insulin resistance. I learned that it can take anywhere from 3 months to over a year to reverse it. Typically, once insulin resistance is reversed, by continuing to eat a very low-carb diet, weight starts to come off. In my opinion, if you are a newbie to low-carb eating, insulin resistance is the biggest single reason for a stall, assuming that you are actually following a low-carb lifestyle. Insulin is also very fickle, and if you stray from a very low-carb diet, you can undo the progress you have made. My mantra became, what will happen to my insulin if I eat this food? As I mentioned in episode 8, when you eat carbs, your glucose rises. If your glucose rises, your insulin rises because its job is to lower the glucose in your bloodstream. It will always rise if you eat carbs. If you are insulin resistant, too much insulin will enter your bloodstream and stay there, blocking fat loss. My very localized why became, I have to reverse my insulin resistance. Only if I did that would I improve my health. I became extremely strict and unwavering when it came to what I put in my mouth. Reminding myself of my goal to reverse my insulin resistance completely stopped me from desiring any kind of junk food. If you don't eat carbs, your insulin stays low. If you fast, your insulin stays low. This is one reason that intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating works well for weight loss. The longer you go without eating, the longer your insulin stays low. The good news is that The good news is that you will become metabolically flexible after you reverse your insulin resistance. And ultimately, you may be able to be a tad more flexible with your food choices. So, to wrap up, what are some of the important takeaways from this video that may help you as we start the new year? 1. Identify a why that will keep you from that just this once mentality. Make it local, not global. Something you can turn to immediately. Your why should help you resist cravings and help you to decide if what you are about to eat is worth it. 2. Get your blood work done. Your blood work tells you how your body is responding to your diet. It's a better victory than your weight or the size of your clothes, and helps determine that what you are doing is actually working. 3. Remember that although we absolutely need insulin, we also absolutely don't need too much of it. Maybe my why, which is to eliminate insulin resistance and to maintain low insulin levels, makes sense for you as well. Going back to the just this once mentality, that may have worked on a calorie-based diet. I'll eat this now and skip something else. Just this once affects your insulin in a very different way. You want to avoid excess insulin always. The damage is done, and you can't undo it. Well, you can undo it over time, but it's not the same as swapping 200 calories of one food for another. If you are enjoying these videos, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. It helps me get better exposure. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.